Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Barry London, and I welcome everyone to the University Unitarian Universalist Fellowship here on wonderful McCulloch Road. I have my mask off while I speak, and anyone else who comes up to the speaker, one of these may take their mask off, but otherwise we ask you to keep your mask on during the service. I want to welcome everyone, particularly anyone that may be on virtually in addition. And a special welcome to any visitors, also whether virtual or real. Only the virtual ones here are here, huh? Please take a moment to silence your devices if you have not already done so. And with that, we will proceed and begin our service with committee moments, and I invite anybody representing their committees to please come up, remove your mask, and tell us your story.
I know. Okay. David McElroy, men's group is tomorrow night here. It does say April 18th up here, and that is incorrect. It is tomorrow night here at 6:30, and we're going to have potluck if you so desire to bring something. If you feel uncomfortable sharing, bring your own. And if you have not been there, some few men here have not been there before maybe, see me afterwards, or you can, I think my email is online, you can contact me that way. So tomorrow night, 6:30, men's group.
Hi, Carrie Mitchell, RE Committee Chair. RE is looking forward to our summer planning, and what we usually do is a more relaxed curriculum. We love to have volunteers come back and teach the kids a special something that you know how to do. So we've had people come teach them how to crochet. We've done different types of cooking things. My daughter Celia loves to do special effects makeup. I think David McElroy did clown stuff with them one year. So that sort of thing, if you have a special interest you'd love to share with our kids, please let me or Judith know. There's a Google Doc sign-up form in our RE newsletter that she sends out each week, but if you don't receive that, then just see one of us and we'll make sure that you can get signed up for that. We also could use some donations of things for our playground, like sand toys, playground balls, something to store the playground balls in. So if you have anything like that that's just laying around the house that you don't use anymore, think of us. We could make use of it. Thanks.
Hi, Larry Vita here. The Seder is April 15th at 6 p.m. This is the sign-up sheet for it. Bring a dish. And, yep. It's a Friday night at 6 p.m. On April 15th. I'm going to leave the sign-up over here. And I guess if you're online, maybe we can figure out a way for people if they want to come. I don't know.
We'll get something in the note.
Yeah. Huh?
Do you want to explain what a Seder is?
Yes, it's for Passover. It's a great big dinner where you drink lots of wine and Jill makes and my wife makes really good matzo ball soup. So, and we make a great big pot of it. So, and gefilte fish. Yes. All right. So I'm going to leave this up here. If anyone wants to come, you put it there. We'll put it there next week too, and it's going to be a great time.
I'm excited about that. That's one event that usually we have 50 or 60 people, and it's a lot of fun. I tried to convince Jill to do frozen matzo ball soup while we were apart, and the logistics were too hard to make happen. So hopefully everybody can come to that. I'm Martha Kirby, the board president. I'm here today on behalf of the Pledge Committee, of which we're all a part, to remind you that started last week. and that you can go on our website, and there's a big orange banner at the top that says, click here to make your pledge, renew your commitment to our fellowship. And we hope that you all will do that. We are 8% of the way, which is pretty good for the first week. We're trying to do it in 4 weeks, like WMFE does, a short pledge drive. So we'll just keep reminding you every week. There will be lots of fun activities. Not this week because it's me and not Sarah and Kelly. They're more the fun ones. But on the 24th, we'll also be having an event after church. So look forward to that, and make your pledge as soon as you can so that we know what we can do for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. And also the rental committee will be meeting after service. And so for opening words, our subject being domestic violence, by Dennis McCarty. He is a UU minister in Columbus, Indiana, a litany for sufferers of domestic abuse. In the spirit of love, harmony, and remembrance, we often stand too divided. Too often, we're set apart from one another in heedless ways. We seek to be compassionate, but our vision may be clouded or distracted. We too often go forward day by day and look without seeing. May we reach out in honesty and love. May we seek to heal the divisions which separate Earth's children one from another. May we peer through the mist of deception which hide and deny violence, mist enclosing those who suffer. May we not allow the misuse of our fellow souls to hide in broad daylight. May we reach out in honesty and love. When we see the afflicted, however they may be afflicted, may we not shrink away. May we not blame suffering on the one who suffers. May we be courageous enough to perceive suffering and compassionate enough to attend to the voices of those who suffer. May we reach out in honesty and love. When we see prejudice, when we hear evil speaking, when we witness the rough hand or the scathing word laid upon the helpless or the innocent, may we resolve to work toward unity and justice. And for our opening music, how could anyone, and this is by Libby Roderick.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
And now for the lighting of the chalice. This is something we typically do when we invite one of our children from the RE, but they're separate during this period, and hopefully we can begin that process in the near future. If you will join with me. And the words that are so important to us, our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. So again, we welcome everyone that has gathered with us today, and particularly any guest. We invite you to come see us a couple of times because we have different programs. We have lay programs such as we have today, and we also have on board now a Unitarian minister, Reverend Tracy Barrett, and so we're very excited about that, and we invite you to come back to hear both Tracy or more lay programs. I wrote here that now we also have a dang good minister. And as to joys and concerns, this is an opportunity for people to come up and share with us your greatest concerns or a recent joy that perhaps you wish to share with us. And please remember that the words will be part of our stream, and we invite you forward, and we'll also check back with Martha to see if there are any people listening to us virtually who have something to share today.
Greetings again, David McElroy. Several things. We had Marilyn's relatives here from Wisconsin, and they went over to Daytona and had a great time. Then we found out last night that 5 of them are stranded, were stranded at the airport and would not be able to get out till Monday. So we now have 3 teenagers and Marilyn's niece at our house. And it's been kind of interesting because I haven't dealt with teenagers in a while, so. And they're not sullen, but, you know. And there's some joys this month with, April's been crazy for artistic time. Marilyn is not here today because she's working on a play that opens this Friday at the last play at Mad Cow Theater. It is called Sea Rock City, and she's busily preparing for that, and that runs through the end of through the 24th. Chloe has 2 plays that she's in at Orlando Repertory Theater. That's on the 20th. And I actually have 2 plays that I wrote that are being presented in Florida. One at Valencia on Seder night, unfortunately. I can't be here. And the other is down in Sunrise, Florida on the 30th. Actually, 3 different dates, but the 30th. So we're excited about having all these things happen. They're all seem to be happening at once, but it's great, and we're glad that we have place for the relatives as well. Thanks.
again. I wanted to share from Reverend Tracy. Most of you probably know, if you're on our mailing list, we sent out a notice Monday that she contracted COVID after being in Dayton, Ohio, she guesses, with her cohort. So that's why, well, she wouldn't be here today anyway. It's her Sunday off. But she's on the mend, so please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. And we had a couple of other congregants that may have gotten it from her, may not. You never know for sure, but we hope everybody's doing well. And we have nothing this morning from our 15 people online, so that's good. It just is. Okay.
Hi, my name's Emma. It's my first time here. I'm kind of traveling around in my van. I've been in Connecticut for a while, and now I'm here, and so happy to be here and see everybody. I'm in a new relationship that feels really healthy and wonderful, but I've been in a lot of very unhealthy, toxic relationships in my life, so I'm trying to navigate this, and this is kind of my my time that I took for myself to come and make sure I'm keeping my independence and doing things by myself sometimes, and not just with my partner constantly. So I feel really good about that. And my mom has to get some surgery pretty soon because she has to get like 2 of her vertebrae fused or something. But she has had a lot of back pain for a long time, and she feels really good about this, that now she knows, like, oh, this is the reason, and there's something that can be done about it, and it's very exciting. Thank you.
May we also now take a moment to pause for those concerns that were not expressed today, particularly the let's pray to end that terrible war in Europe. So if you will take 30 seconds. Thank you. And now, a time for all ages with Judith. Welcome, Judith.
Thank you, Barry. I'm the Director of Religious Education here at Triple U, in case there's anyone out there amongst the 15 or anyone else that happens to see this later on YouTube, and for anyone new to our space this morning. And I need my glasses. Did y'all know that Unitarian Universalists, as Unitarian Universalists, we have scriptures? Silence. We have stories, lessons, treatises that provide examples and reinforcement for the messages of the values of Unitarian Universalism. Martha knows. Martha should know. Those scriptures are referred to as our 6 sources. They include direct experience for transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil and with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. And for some reason, those aren't included in the wisdom from the world's religions, which I've never understood, but that's a UU thing. Humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. spiritual teachings of the earth, of earth-centered traditions which celebrate sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Right? The second one, the words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us and the transforming power of love, is the one that I tend to refer to the most. If any of you have ever read anything I've written in the RE News, or when we were doing newsletters, any of my columns, you probably heard me refer to some of these. Star Trek, Downton Abbey, MASH. These are where I find my prophetic people. These are these are the sources that reinforce the values, that remind me of the values that I value, right, of Unitarian Universalist values, and encourage me. And oddly enough, by the way, they themselves are often referring to several of those other sources I mentioned. Today I am pulling from the works of the prophet Aaron Sorkin, as told in the book of The West Wing. In the Christmas episode, in the third season, episode 9, titled Noel, Josh Lyman, the Deputy Secretary of State, played by Bradley Whitford, is being helped by a team from NAMI, right, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, to deal with a PTSD event that they were going through. After the session, he is checked in on by his boss, the Secretary of State, Leo McGarry, played by the late John Spencer, who had arranged for this intervention with NAMI. He says, "You didn't have to do this, Leo. Why?" To which Leo replies, "This person is walking down the street and he falls into a hole. The walls are so steep that the person cannot climb out. A doctor passes by, and the guy shouts up, 'Hey, you, can you help me?' The doctor writes a prescription, throws it into the hole, and moves on. A priest walks by, and the person in the hole shouts up, 'Hey, I fell down here, I need help.' To which the priest writes a prayer, throws it down in the hole, and the priest walks by. Then a friend walks by. 'Hey,' says the person in the hole, 'Jamie, I fell down here. Can you help me out?' Jamie jumps into the hole. Our person who fell down there goes, 'Are you stupid? Now we're both stuck here.' Yeah, the friend says, 'Yeah, but I've been down here before. I know the way out.'" Now, some of you may have heard this story before. In an interview I recently listened to with John Spencer, he referred to it as the Irish story. I did some research. I can't figure out why it's called the Irish story, but it is. Maybe one of you knows the answer later. Please tell me. But why am I telling this story today? Our speaker today is speaking about domestic violence. They're speaking about resources and the culture around it and things we need to know to be of help in the wider world, or we need to know so we can get help from the wider world. As one of the leaders in this congregation, we also need to remember that I'm here to remind you that we're also part of a community, a congregation that is out here to help fix the bigger world, but that starts with the smaller world that we are in. You are part of a community, as you've been reminded the last couple of weeks, that is a covenanted group that is promised to support one another, to be here and responsible to one another. You have one another. You have a pastoral care team. You have a youth group. You have an OWL team, which you may not realize is there for all of you in some fashion also. If you need help from any of us, your board, me, or your minister, all you have to do is ask for help. Sometimes, as a member of a congregation, of a Unitarian Universalist congregation, our values are forgotten. and sometimes they're remembered. But sometimes we are the person that fell in the hole. And sometimes we're the person that jumps in the hole to help. And that is why we are all here. Just like in the scripture of the West Wing, as told by the prophet Aaron Sorkin. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. That was a holy program. And so, it is now time for the interlude and offering. We are going to share the plate today with Harbor House of Central Florida, and we invite you to make donations. We have a basket against the wall between the doors over here. And we have music. The interlude music is I Know This Rose Will Open by Jess Huderman. And for our presentation today, domestic violence, our presenter will be Michelle Sperzel. She is the Chief Executive Officer with nearly 25 years of leadership and nonprofit experience. Michelle currently serves as Chief Executive Officer of Harbor House of Central Florida, Orange County's only state-certified domestic violence organization. She's been in this role for nearly 6 years. If there's time, perhaps afterwards, there may be questions following Michelle's presentation. Let's extend a hand to Michelle.
I can hear myself walking, so I think you can hear me. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very, very much for inviting me to be your speaker this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about domestic violence. I'm going to talk a little bit about the signs of domestic violence as far as if you want to help somebody or if you might be experiencing it yourself. So the first thing I want to ask is how many people have somebody that they know has contracted COVID or you've gotten COVID yourself? Show of hands. So that's what a pandemic looks like. And the statistics for the CDC is that 1 in 7 Americans, or 1 in 5 Americans, they're still not sure, have been impacted by have been impacted by COVID. The number for domestic violence across the world is 1 in 3. So if you can think about the hands that went up, and you can think about just your circle of friends and family members who have been impacted by COVID, which is very open, how many people do you know have been impacted by domestic violence within their lifetime? And I say within their lifetime because they may not be in it right now. It might be that something that they experienced as a child, and we talk about childhood survivors of domestic violence, where they saw the violence perpetrated, their father against their mom or their mom against their father or if they were raised in a same-sex relationship with parents that were the same sex. We talk about survivors of domestic violence that are survivors that went through it themselves when they were in their dating years. We talk about survivors of domestic violence who are currently living in our shelter. And so there's many different places where domestic violence ends up happening in someone's life. And it's not just someone who's experiencing it right now. And I want everybody to really kind of know about that, because even when someone leaves, that echo of the violence in their life leaves an impression. And that's why we talk about childhood survivors of domestic violence. And that's why we're working with kids in our emergency shelter, because kids are resilient. But at the same point in time, if they're not shown or modeled different types of behaviors and different types of ways in order for you to deal with a argument or deal with a conversation, if you are somebody who you've already seen that the language of your family is fists and angry words, then that's what you're going to really show the rest of the world as well. And so our role, as far as the domestic violence provider that's here in Orange County, is to really start and letting people know that there's something different and there are different choices. So Harbor House, I'm going to tell you what we do, because I want us to be a referral source for you. So Harbor House, we have our emergency shelter, which a lot of people think about. And so we have our crisis hotline that you'll all leave here with information of, if you want someone to call, how you can get a hold of the crisis line. Someone calls the crisis line, they can go into our emergency shelter. Or oftentimes people say, why don't you just leave? Well, for so many people, that's incredibly difficult to be able to do. I know it was hard for me to be able to leave. So we have a lot of different resources for someone who's staying in that relationship, for them to prepare themselves to be able to leave. So it might be calling the crisis line and being on the phone with that advocate to talk through safety planning or ways to save money, or how to open up a bank account. How do I save money? How do I hide it away? Or it might be having an opportunity to go talk to one of our peer support advocates at one of our offices around Orange County. It might be that someone wants to file an injunction, and that's where we serve a lot of our male survivors, is in the court system, that we have 4 attorneys. Someone can go to the courthouse, they can work with one of our court advocates, and then they can also file an injunction for protection. In some states that might be called a restraining order. But that's another thing that we offer in the community. The other thing that we offer is we offer support for friends and family members who you are worried about someone, or you're concerned about somebody. You think that someone that you know might be experiencing domestic violence, and how do you help support them? And we have 2 different things that we do for individuals that are, one is our friends and family support group. It is an online support group. We meet every other Tuesday. The next one I think is on the 18th. And that's where we have an hour long with different people who are concerned about someone that they care about, talking and sharing different resources. And we also have a class that's called Checking In, and that's where some of the material I'm going to talk about today is from. So how do you know if someone's experiencing domestic violence? How do you know if you're experiencing domestic violence? So the first thing is that as a person, you should never fear the person that you're being intimate with. And when you're looking at a friend, and if you know that they fear that person, and they fear them repercussions about something that they might say, they fear them because of repercussions of something that they might buy, money that they might spend, something that they might cook, that they might not have cleaned something in the proper way, that is something that in a healthy relationship doesn't exist. That's something that in a toxic relationship might exist. But if you fear somebody, that's something that exists in a domestic violence and a dangerous relationship. So that's something that is a red flag for someone who's experiencing domestic violence or someone who you care about. Another one is isolation. So if it's that you are seeing that you are not having the same access to your family member or to your friend, as in you call, they don't answer, you call, or they make up an excuse for something, or you just notice that they are drifting and becoming less and less part of your life, that's another red flag. And part of that is because that abuser knows that if they start to take away all of those different friends and family members and the people who help support, they're going to be able to control that person even more. Another red flag would be somebody who they used to have a lot of access to different resources, and those resources they no longer have access to. And so what am I talking about? I'm talking about money. So we do a lot of work with our survivors when it comes to economic empowerment work and teaching them about how do you save money, how do you work with your credit score, how do you check your credit score. Oftentimes abusers who are abusing someone financially, and it might be that it started very early, as in that relationship started when they were possibly in high school and someone says, you don't have to finish school, I'm gonna take care of you forever. That abuser has taken away that person's education. Since they've taken away their education, that means the likelihood that they're gonna be able to go after different types of positions within the world has also been taken away. And so that's another red flag as far as economic abuse that's existing within a relationship. Another piece along with that might be that someone does have a job, but then the abuser is insistently calling. Calling, are you there? I need to talk to you, what about this? And trying to control that 8 hours that someone's away from the home. That might lead to someone being fired from their job. That's another form of economic abuse that's happened in that relationship. And that's one where as an employer or as a supervisor, and if you notice you have a really great employee, but they continually get phone calls from home, it's okay for you to ask what's going on, to find out. And then from that person's behavior, you might find out that they are scared of their partner, and that is one reason why they say, I have to pick up. And so you can say, okay, that's okay, you can pick up, but try and keep it to a minute. Try and keep it to 2 minutes and let them know, like, hey, I need to get something done at work, and see how that goes. You can have those conversations with someone who's experiencing domestic violence, and you might be impacted by it because it's happening in the workplace. Another thing that would be another sign is what people would tend to look at, which is going to be emotional abuse. And so when you're seeing somebody and you're in an interaction with them, and that person that is their partner is consistently putting them down, calling them stupid, calling them dumb, nobody would ever want you, I don't know why you would even think that you deserve me, that's emotional abuse. That's what takes the longest for someone who's experienced domestic violence to heal from. That's what takes the longest for a child that's witnessed it when it's happened in their own home to also heal from and to change and not know that it's not okay to talk to somebody in that way. And then there's the piece that, media puts out there, and that there's the piece that we often just think that that's the first sign, but it's oftentimes the last sign, which is the physical violence. And so, yes, if someone's experiencing domestic violence, is physical violence absolutely part of it? It is, but there's a lot of other things that are happening that you may not see, that you just need to be aware of. And so why am I giving you those signs? The signs are, I'm telling you this because we are all advocates, and that's my ultimate job, is to let everybody know the signs, because someone is more likely to go to you than they are to call a domestic violence center and ask for help and support. They trust you more than they trust me. And so what I'm asking is that you learn more about domestic violence and that you're armed with some of the different things that will defeat that perpetrator. And part of that is talking to them and explaining what is a safety plan, which is knowing that you can call a domestic violence center, you can have a bag for you to be able to pack, you can put together a small miniature hurricane kit and just keep it at my house. And so if something happens, you know you have all the paperwork that you need plus $1,000, and you can then take that to go someplace else. So that you can also talk to them about how you are concerned for them. Part of being an advocate is listening without judgment. And so if you are going to be really helping somebody who's experiencing domestic violence and you want to talk to them, some of the things that you can do are this. One, know that they're not going to come and talk to you. That you have to take that opportunity, that leap of faith, to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about your safety. I'm concerned about your security. I'm worried about the kids, and so I want to talk to you. And know that that conversation might not go well. But that's something that you can do. The other thing that you can do is be prepared to listen, and listen with no judgment. Listen with the fact that it might be the first time that they're talking to anybody about it. The third thing that you can do is also be there and have some sort of resources. It might be Harbor House, It might be that you read an article that you want to share with them, something of that nature. So let me just tell you a little bit more about one of the different survivors that we helped to give you an idea of what it's like when someone ends up being impacted in that way. And the whole thing is that domestic violence, it exists. It's something that people of all ages learn about, mostly because of media. So we had a survivor, and she ended up coming into our emergency shelter after an intense weekend of her being beaten and raped by her husband. And what was different this time is that when he was done with her, he started going after their oldest daughter, who was 10 years old. She screamed and she yelled, and she hit him in order for him to leave. He did. And when he left, she got into the shower to wash off her own blood. When she got out of the shower, her daughter was standing there and said, "Mom, I call 911 because you're bleeding and we need help." And everything happened really, really fast after that. So the survivor was picked up by law enforcement. Law enforcement brought her to us and brought her to Harbor House. We did an intake with the entire family, and we realized that they had not eaten since Friday, and it was Sunday. And so the first thing that the advocates did is we got them comfort food. We made them some mac and cheese. We ended up getting them some chicken nuggets, French fries, just things that we knew that the kids would really like. And then we made sure that we got them some brand new pajamas and also some new clothes. And that night, the girls and the mom went to bed in our emergency shelter wearing unicorn pajamas, and they were safe for the first time in a really long time. So they stayed with us for about 3 months, and during that time, the mom, she had a job, but at the same point in time, she didn't have any access to her finances because the abuser had done direct deposit, so her paycheck was going right into his bank account. So we were able to help her by setting up a bank account, helping her start to figure out how to budget, working with her to make sure that the kids were safe. And alongside of that, for the kids, we wanted to make sure that they were understanding what they had seen at the house was not normal. We have a program called Trailblazers, which is a camp program. We have the kids go through a lot of different things so the kids can be kids, but do it in a way that they're understanding conflict resolution, that they're understanding that there are ways for them to be able to better express their feelings. And then also we celebrated everybody's triumphs. Fast forward several months later, and like I mentioned, she was with us for 3 months. When they were ready to move out, they moved into their own apartment. We worked with her to get an injunction, and then we also worked with her for her to find a lawyer to get a divorce. And then by the time they were leaving, and 3 months is not a long time, they were moving into their own apartment, and then we worked with some other community providers to get them furniture, food, all those different things that they needed to be able to set up their new place. Not every story that I tell has a happy ending like that. But when we have it, that's when all of us know that the work that we're doing together is right, because it was her little girl who was the hero of that story, that knew that they needed help, and she called 911. It was the law enforcement officers that also asked the question, do you want help? Do you want to leave? She said yes. Otherwise, they would have left her there. She said, I need to leave. And then the law enforcement officers brought her to Harbor House. And it's all the advocate work that ended up going into it, but it's the survivor who said, I need something different. We can want all we want to change someone's life. But at the very, very core of it, it has to be that person. And so I'm empowering you with some knowledge so that you can help empower other people, because that's how we're going to change domestic violence. And also it's by holding perpetrators accountable and taking away their power that we're going to be able to change people's lives. So thank you. I'm sure there's a lot, hopefully there's a lot of questions. You guys are very quiet. Yes, sir. So there are 41 domestic violence centers just in the state of Florida. all of us are our own independent nonprofits. Harbor House is just here in Orange County, but I work with my sister centers across the state. I have a really strong relationship with Help Now that's in Osceola County, and so we do a lot of different things together, grants and some of the other DD centers. And so we're all different. So for instance, my shelter is 120 beds, and the one in Osceola County, it's a 50 bed. I have a 9-acre campus that has the shelter. I have a children's program. I have a pet program. We're all just different depending on the needs. Yes, every state has a domestic violence program. We have seed money through the federal government in order for every state to have some sort of a domestic violence program. So yes.
Two questions.
Yes.
How are you funded? And what level of security do you have at Harbor House to protect the residents?
Two great questions. So we are thankfully funded in a pretty diversified way. So we have a lot of our money that comes from the government, and that would be local, and then also state and federal government. The rest of our money comes from individuals that are here in the local area. We ended up, it's a $5 million nonprofit, and $1 million comes straight from just individuals. And then we have other funding that comes from private foundations and company foundations. So we're very diversified. The government funding is incredibly important because that's the bread and butter money. That's what provides the emergency shelter. That's what provides our crisis hotline. That's what funds our legal program. And then it's the community that funds the other programs. For instance, somebody, when they want to come into our emergency shelter, we have a pet program so that you do not have to leave your pet behind. Oftentimes, animals are the first victims within a domestic violence situation. And so why would you leave your pet behind if you know that they hit you? You know that something's going to happen to your dog or your cat. And so that's why we make it very easy for someone to come in and bring the entire family with them. And then the other question was, how do we keep people secure? So our campus itself is a confidential location. And so that campus, we have cameras, we have security gates. If anything happens, we have panic buttons for all the different advocates. That's the living situation. As far as our other offices, all of our other offices have security cameras and panic buttons as well. So that's how we keep people safe. Yes.
This is so current for me because just yesterday I was involved in a conversation with a young girl who has a very good friend who's in an abusive relationship. Apparently she is married to the man and there's a small child. They unfortunately also live with that man's parents. Mm-hmm. And
isolation.
The girl is afraid of leaving because she's afraid what will happen to the child. It seems to me that there's plenty of legal recourses for that, but she won't take that step.
That's when kids are involved, it makes it even harder. And so part of that is going to be making sure that if she does, I would say having her reach out and work with whatever domestic violence organization is in her local area will be incredibly helpful. And part of it is going to be getting that support that I'm talking about that she can get before she leaves, even if she's staying in that situation. And what we can talk to her about would be talking about how do you document the abuse? How do you want to file? Because if you do want to file abuse charges or file an injunction, that would help with the divorce proceedings. Does she want to get divorced? Does she just want to get separated? Asking all of those questions so that she's armed with that. Because one, she is thinking about, I don't want to lose my baby. But the other part of it, and that's the really hard part of it is, do you want your baby to lose you? And that is the reality that someone needs to be able to say to her for her to make it as a unit choice, along with the other logistics. And so that's the piece of working and getting someone eventually to a domestic violence provider so we can ask those different questions because we've asked them of many other people. Yeah. So, right in front of me, and I almost didn't see you.
I have 3 questions.
Oh my gosh.
My wife and I are retired mental health professionals. And so the first question is, you've done an intervention. What about the long-term support that someone like that needs? It's not over when they have an apartment and so forth and so on, an injunction especially.
Yes.
The second part is the research suggests that the pandemic has created a huge surge in domestic violence, and I'm wondering how that's impacted your organization. And the third question has to do with what kind of help is available for the abuser, because they're abusing because they were abused. They were the little kids who watched mom being beaten up when they were kids. So I realize you have to have some kind of separation there for protection, but what kind of resources are available for the abusers who are also wounded?
So I'm going to have to remember all your questions. Okay, so for the first one is that at Harbor House, we have a couple of different programs set up for that ongoing wraparound care for somebody. So we have survivors that we've been around for 46 years. We have survivors that have been coming to us back and forth, probably 15, 16 years, some of them. And part of that is because they want to do a check-in with some of the relationships that they are in, or they want to do a check-in, not all of them, but some of them, they want to do a check-in to make sure that the relationship that they're in right now is healthy for boundaries. So that's one thing. We're always available. Even if someone's leaving our emergency shelter, they can come back to our program some other time in some other way. The other piece would be for the program itself, someone can stay in our emergency shelter for 12 weeks. We also have an on-site extended shelter stay, so that is an additional year. And then we also have survivors that will go into our transitional housing program, which is another year. So someone might be with us for almost 2 years, a little bit over 2 years, and that's where we see amazing transformation, because then they're accessing all these different types of programs. We have also on site 2 mental health providers that we pay for the mental health therapy, and then that's also optional, and then someone can most of our therapists are fantastic. They look to see how someone can then use their insurance to continue to work with them, because we typically will be able to, with our grant, pay for about 3 months. Sometimes we can extend it out to 6 months if they're doing it like every other week. So there's that piece. The third question that you asked is what about perpetrators? I'm going to keep on that mental health topic. So as far as perpetrators are concerned, we have a program for teens, and it's part of the diversion program. So say a teen has been arrested for something that might be a domestic violence charge, we'll work with them and do healthy relationship classes with them as far as a diversion program is, to end exactly what you're trying to say, is that, if a boy witnesses domestic violence, he's twice as likely to become a perpetrator himself. So we know that with the kids that are coming in. So that's why we're doing more intervention and prevention type of work with the kids that are coming in. In our emergency shelter right now, we saw probably about 400 kids during the pandemic. In a typical year, it's closer to 600 kids. So we know that the impact we're having are kids that have experienced domestic violence. If we sit down with them, they're with us for 12 weeks. We have another year-long program. Let's get them engaged in that for us to help break that cycle. So those are the different things that we're doing. In the community, there are batters intervention programs that are available. The good thing is now DCF has decided to certify those programs again. So there's going to be some checks and balances with those different programs. Your middle question, I can't remember. The pandemic, yes, thank you. So where we saw the biggest increase of people reaching out for our services, we have our law enforcement program. So we are co-located with Orange County police officers, OPD, which is the Orlando Police Department, and also the Apopka Police Department specifically. And because we saw such a big increase in the use of the law enforcement officers using our advocates that are there, we've expanded, and now we have an advocate that's going to start floating around and try and help figure out what other jurisdictions we can help support, because there are a lot of law enforcement agencies within Orange County. So that was where we saw the biggest increase of number of people who needed services. And then the second one was also for our legal program with our different attorneys that we have, because the courts never closed. And so also, if you needed someone out of your house, law enforcement was saying that you need to file an injunction. So we were getting really busy with people who were coming to file an injunction because they were really working on the process or what we have in place in order for us to be able to help people. And I think the biggest thing that came out of the pandemic is actually a project that we're starting. So what we're doing is that I hired a company called Praxis. They are a technical assistance group that help domestic violence and also violence against women's organizations across the world. And I hired them to help us map when someone from the 911 call to arrest, and then from arrest to probation, so that we can figure out everything that's happening in that process to figure out how we can better serve survivors of domestic violence here in Orange County. So far, we've gotten through a quarter of it, and there's already things that are bubbling up that we can really work through. And one of the pieces is to make sure that all of our services are culturally appropriate. And things are far more difficult when someone is not from our country. And we know that a lot of people come here from Venezuela, they come here from all over the world to get jobs, and some of them definitely stay behind after different internships. And that's the one thing that we noticed, is that law enforcement is not equipped, nor is 911 equipped if the first language isn't English. So I hope that answers all three of your questions. So yes.
I have just a few from online. The first is, has state funding been more difficult to secure the last few years?
So thankfully, no. One thing, and this also ties to COVID, since there was an increase in domestic violence globally, what we ended up seeing from the federal government, from the state government, is that they set aside funding from some of the ARP money and some of the COVID money specifically for domestic violence. And so although it was harder for us to fundraise because everybody was having a very hard time, and now we know with everything that's happening with inflation, it's going to be harder for all nonprofits. One thing that was really wonderful is the fact that they noticed that domestic violence was happening and that they wanted to set aside some additional funds. And so that's something that's been really helpful.
What percentage of the people that you service contact you for verbal abuse? It seems verbal abuse is as destructive as physical.
I mean, I would have to say it is the same. I'm gonna just say 100% because of the fact that it goes hand in hand. And physical abuse, it might be the trigger that had someone realize that they were in a domestic violence situation, but when we start talking to them and we ask the different questions, has your abuser ever, or have they ever, one of the different things is, has they ever put you down? Have they ever called you stupid? Has this person ever called you fat? Have they ever accused you of having an affair? And when we put it in that context, someone says, yes, 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 but I left because he hit me, then we're able to say, but here's the pattern. When we're talking about teaching someone about domestic violence, here's the pattern of what abuse looks like.
What's the difference between men causing violence and women causing violence?
There is no difference.
No.
I mean, domestic
statistically.
violence is domestic violence. And that's a wonderful question because there is a perception that men are not victims of domestic violence. And men are victims of domestic violence. There's a different level of hesitancy, and there's a different level of shame when a male survivor comes forward. And it's not just like, how did I let this happen to me? So many times it is the man who is 6'2" and 260 pounds. And it has been emotional abuse, and it's been verbal abuse. And the whole thing is he knows his size, and he was taught, I should never, ever hit a woman. And that perpetrator, who was a woman, took advantage of that and started to hit him and kick him and punch him and put him down, or all those different things. And so when we're working with male survivors, like I mentioned, our legal program is where we see the majority of our male survivors, but we do have men who live in our emergency shelter who do take advantage of the shelter itself. We do have men who take advantage of our extended stay. So that's the other piece, is that as far as Harbor House is concerned, we serve everybody. Right. So we serve men, women, individuals who are going through transition, people who identify as being non-binary. It doesn't, we just serve everybody.
Good. Just two more short ones. Do you know about YWCC in Orlando? Someone asked if that's still around and if your organization connects with them, but I'm not sure what YWCC is. Maybe Steve can add that to the chat, and I will let you know, since you don't know either.
Nope,
okay.
Nope.
And the other one was, what can we do to help?
Such a great segue. Whoever put that out there, I'm celebrating you. So one of the pieces, like what can you do? Part of it is getting involved with Harbor House in a deeper way. So there's a couple of different things over there that I wanted to let people know about. The first thing is that we do have, how many people here are cat and dog people? Okay, hold a minute. Who's a cat person? Who are the dog people? There's so many more of us.
Yes, and it's noticed.
I have both, right? I have both. I have 8 animals, so just so you know. I can't say anything. Yeah, I probably shouldn't, at least I'm not, I shouldn't say that since I am places where people could bust me for that. But anyway, so we have an event coming up. It's called Pause for Peace Walk. It raises money for the domestic violence shelter and our kennel program. As I mentioned, people can come with their pets, and this is the event that helps us raise money for it. It's going to be on April 30th in Blue Jacket Park, and so it's a walk. You can sign up for it. You can form a team and whatnot. Another event that we have coming up is for our youth program, and that's our Running for Courage program. That's this one right here. Who in here are runners? Who many people want to be runners? I'm in that category as well. I'm doing a Couch to 5K. I used to be a really big runner, and when you stop, it's horrible. It's embarrassing, actually. I feel like I should take down all my medals in my office. Like, you can see them. This is pretend, people. But anyway, so this is on May 19th, and it's going to be at the other part of Blue Jacket, which is in Baldwin Park. And so this raises money for our youth program. And the other piece I would say is that if you want to grab one of our brochures, it says right in here, the signs of domestic violence, how to do a safety plan. And that's the biggest way to get involved, is to learn more about domestic violence, get involved as far as that's concerned. And then we also have events that are throughout the year. Another thing is, if you're worried about someone, bring them to one of our events. You just have to say, I'm going to a walk, I'm going to a run. And then they'll notice where they are. And we always have advocates at any of our events. And we do have situations where people reach out right then and there for help. And we give them the help that they need. So thank you all very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
That was great, and thanks for taking the time for all those questions. Community, or the fire of commitment. In our final closing song,
There is
Well, domestic violence certainly strikes at least two chords with our 7 principles, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The closing words by Joyce Axelson, and Michelle and I agreed that Joyce Axelson is in Brookfield, UU, Wisconsin. So this statement she makes today: break the silence and stop the violence. This is not the victim's problem. It is not those of us who work in the fields problem. It is an issue we all need to address. It is a community issue that needs community members breaking the silence. The participants need a village to heal. They need support. They need jobs. They need rides to services. They need a smile. And they need you to help them recover from the shame and the devastation of thinking they are alone and no one cares. Thank you so much. That concludes our service for today. I can't begin to thank our presenter for coming today. It was great. Thank you, Michelle. We have coffee, and we invite everyone to stay and to gather with your friends for a while. Thank you.